Welcome to r/MaliciousCompliance, where we share stories of people conforming to the letter, but not the spirit of a request. Thank you, friends, for subscribing to the channel, and for so many likes. The first story: boss father did not listen to me and has to pay big money. The second story: manager makes big deal about 25 minutes overtime. I forward his email calling the client unreliable. The third story: guy couldn't use land for commercial reasons, so made a pig farm. Today's first story is: dad treats me like the least important person in the office, so I only let him know about something critical once, instead of hounding him to get it done. My dad is a CPA, a total boomer, an awful boomer. He was exempted from serving in Vietnam for medical reasons, rare bone disease, and has zero sympathy for Vietnam vets who haven't gotten their SH together already. He thinks mental illnesses, including PTSD, are made-up ways for doctors to give you drugs, and anyone who succumbs is weak. For example, I have bipolar, and anyone who knows anything about it knows that I should take my meds, as prescribed, for the rest of my life. To him, that means I chose prohibited substances and deserve no respect. I'm not changing my meds because I've been on the same ones successfully for 15 years. I don't know how much y'all know about bipolar meds, but basically it's trial and error, unless there's some family history of treatments to guide the psychiatrist. So basically, if mine tinkered, he'd be guessing what worked, and having me try it for a month or more. Most bipolar people give up because the medicine just isn't working. I know a very determined guy who tried 17 different combinations before finding one that clicked. I don't want to go through experiments when clearly my mental problems came from outside. My dad. His office and mind are absolutely chaotic. Things are lost, shuffled under stuff. Where's that file was one of the most common questions asked by any staff. Dad would have the whole office stop to look for an important file for a coworker who swears she gave it to him, but he has no recollection of that happening. Guess where I find the file? On his desk, over by his adding machine, under a mountain of church charity brochures he just ordered. His email? Wow. If I told you he, at any given time, had over 3,000 unread emails, would that surprise you? Most of them were spam or 100 days of prayer stuff, but there were important emails going unchecked, especially anything I sent him, because nothing about me was important enough to even warrant a glance. The worst part of him making me feel useless was the fact that I was the only one who would notice something like we're running out of stationery and try to order some, only to be told to wait, and have to bring it up multiple times until we're down to our last two pieces, and the cheapskate is photocopying our stationery because no one will notice or care. From office supplies to maintaining our ability to e-file to arranging everyone's continuing education for the year, always done December 28th to 30th in a panic, calling vendors to keep our equipment running, cranking out tax returns he should have done already while the clients wait in the lobby to pick it up. I was never fast enough. To consoling our counseling coworkers on how to approach him regarding X. New software installation? Yes, there are people in their 20s and 40s who don't understand how to install a disk or open a file and click run. I was running myself ragged for the good of his company, but anything I had to say was immediately disregarded. Sorry about the previous run-on sentence. Don't know how to structure it better and still give an idea of how broad my responsibilities were, because no one else gave a D. One thing he was a stickler about: saving copies of everything. For example, in 2009, the IRS demanded a copy of a customer's certain payroll tax form they claimed not to have received from 1996. We hadn't even prepared the D thing, but we had a copy. The paper got to be too much, and the filing cabinets in the attic were creating cracks in the ceiling. We went paperless, and our extremely competent IT guy set us up 3 backup systems. Since we by then had 2 offices, he had 2 1-terabyte hard drives that every 2 seconds exchanged data, so if a tornado blew away a whole building, we'd still have everything from both buildings in the other building. Another backup was kept in the cloud, and another on a server in a state across the country. One day I had been yelled at once again until I started to cry, then was berated. Either go home and cry or shut up and do your job. On January 5th one year, I got an email from our IT guy, who had CC'd Dad but knew to include me, that our 1-terabyte backups had enough space to last maybe 2 days, and that he could upgrade us in time to prevent a disaster. I called over to Dad. Our offices were adjacent, and our voices carry. That IT guy sent a really important email. Dad replies, "Uh-huh," in a way that tells me he's not paying a bit of attention to what I was saying. So I forwarded my email to him and changed the subject to urgent, important, pending disaster, and gave him no further reminders after that. Not my job. I was supposed to shut up, remember? So he didn't read either email. Even with my subject line, my email didn't strike him as one he should read. On January 8th, the SH hit the fan. We lost everything. Our IT guy dropped everything and got everything up to December 27th from the cloud backup. The server in the other state said it would cost us $7,000 rush fee and 3 weeks to fully restore everything the way it was. Well, W-2s and numerous payroll reports, sales tax filings, and other government deadlines occur in January, so we didn't have 3 weeks. My coworkers had to redo or reconstruct everything they'd done from December 27th to January 8th, which was a lot. Anything we had completed, scanned, and shredded was gone. A major audit was underway, and several crucial spreadsheets had disappeared. The worker that had prepared them did so on his last 2 days before moving to another firm, December 26th and 27th. All in all, our IT guy was paid about $12,000 to spend 3 14 to 16-hour days. One was his Sabbath, rescuing what he could. Over $10,000 in overtime pay, and we still had missing stuff. This was concerning to clients affected because to them, data loss equals data breach. Nobody would ever hack into our system because our IT guy would consider it a personal failure if we were successfully hacked. Our data was safe from everyone but Dad. Dad never suspected me of anything. Had I pointed out that I had reminded him only once, since he thought I should only have to be told something once, he would have berated me for sabotaging the firm. While he wouldn't listen to me, it was my job to make sure he did his job? Don't think so. End of malicious compliance. Eventually, the harassment became too much, and I had a nervous breakdown and quit. I do food delivery for a living because something in me is broken, and I don't think I could hold down a real job anymore. My mental health has vastly improved since I left that place, and I maintain my credential and offer free random tax advice on Reddit to stay sharp. And before all the comments start about what an SH show of a CPA office this must be, they're all like that. The coworker who quit in December came back to us the next year and said that even with $10,000 CRM software, supposedly tracking workflow, at the third largest firm in our state, where's the so-and-so file was the #1 question on a daily basis, and they spent as much time looking for stuff as they did doing actual work. Every worker we've had with previous experience working for another CPA agreed. Files got lost all the time. I'm maintaining my tax credential so I can pick up where I left off, if I ever feel ready. I do believe I have to work for myself. I couldn't handle being told I did something subpar by a boss. I get stressed out enough when I forget straws for drinks. When I say food delivery isn't a real job, I'm by no means devaluing it. It's independent contracting. I set my own hours and I absolutely love it. I guess I'm just stuck with the tax terminology that you don't refer to self-employment as a job, because it's not an actual W-2 job. It has nothing to do with my perceived value of what I do. It has to do with W-2 versus 1099, and I guess I always pictured most real jobs as having set hours, whatever those hours may be. The second story is, verbal overtime approved is like toilet paper. Okay. Quick background. I was hired as an inspector, which was an hourly job. Overtime pay and overtime was common, but involved management to approve. Management needed to approve as there were many inspectors on standby, and if they could just have another inspector continue at start of the next shift, they wouldn't need to pay overtime, which was fair. Overtime decisions were made by team leader, supervisor, scheduler, or project manager. Story. I was working at a client's site. It was around 2:50 p.m. when the client walks on the floor and asks for the progress. I let him know that I'm done with 95% of the work, and the remaining 5% should be completed the next day. He then asks me if I could complete the remaining 5% today by staying overtime. I let him know that I could, and that it actually needs approval. Now, this guy was from the same country as I was from, and we got along well. He says I have his approval, and if any of the supervisors, project manager, or anyone needs to hear it from him, he can let them know that I have approval. I say thank you, and he walks away. This client facility is huge, and the area I was working had bad cell phone reception. I try calling, texting, the other management that I was doing overtime. One text goes through to a supervisor, who doesn't reply back, but I knew he'd be cool with it. I couldn't walk out of the facility or to a different area, as walking out means I need to check out of security and walk about 7 to 8 minutes to get there, and then go back inside, checking into the security and walk back 7 to 8 minutes. Walking to a different area kinda meant abandoning my post, which was frowned upon by the client and reported to my management, so I was taking untimely breaks. Me being a team leader myself had the authority to make that decision. Me being the only person on site doing that job also meant I was acting supervisor. So, I decided to complete the job, which took me 25 minutes of overtime. This was Friday. On Monday, I was scheduled to a different client alongside the supervisor whom I had texted. Supervisor came from a different site and joined me a few hours later. Couple of hours into the shift, when my hours were processed and I sent the end of project email with all the report and hours billed, I start getting nasty grams from my project manager as to who approved the overtime and who did I contact and all. This is in the same email chain as the end of project report to the customer. Project manager removed the customer from the email chain before sending me those nasty grams. My supervisor, who's setting up this stuff, sees that I'm uneasy and kind of scared as the project manager was angry on me and looking into what was going on. In the email chain, I explained that I had verbal approval from the client. Project manager: verbal approval is like toilet paper. It gets flushed down the drain, plus some stuff that basically says we can't trust the client and that I should get written approval, if not before, at least afterwards as soon as possible. Cue malicious compliance. We were required to have all conversation with the client regarding a closed project in the same email chain so that all issues, if any, stay in one email chain which the management was copied on. Since this happened on Friday end of shift, technically Monday was as soon as possible per the request. So I added the client back to the email chain and asked him to kindly send a written approval for the 25 minutes of overtime he requested. Oh, and yes, I made sure I added the client replying back to the email from my PM, where he said the toilet paper line. I also called the client to let him know about replying back to the email with the approval. We were cool and kind of buddies at this point. He says he will and we hang up. 10 minutes later, PM called me angrily saying he didn't mean that I asked for the approval in the same email chain and all. I explained I had approval, and all but the conversation just ended, he repeating his side and me repeating mine. Meantime, I tell the supervisor what I did and we burst out laughing. He's saying he can't believe it. Client eventually replied back, saying I had approval, and the chain went silent after that. I get a call from HR that day, saying I need to be aware of the email chain and what stuff is in it before adding customer, etc. That's all. The last story is: guy wanted to open a sporting goods store. Restaurant owner next door told this city to rezone it as agriculture. Guy couldn't use land for commercial reasons. Guy complied. Once upon a time, there was a man who owned a piece of land next to a thriving restaurant. Now, this man had owned the land for a long time, 22 years, and it was undeveloped. He had bought it cheaply, but it had great highway frontage, and he had always dreamed of building a little used cars lot or gun shop on the tract as his retirement pastime. Now, the man had the tract zoned as a commercial lot when he bought it, but when news leaked about the upcoming development, the restaurant owners petitioned the zoning board to overturn the commercial zoning and reinstitute the original agricultural zoning. By the way, all land in the mythical state of Kentucky is zoned as agricultural by default. This was unfair, illegal, and generally rude, but the restaurateur's brother was the county zoning commissioner, so things naturally turned against our would-be entrepreneur. After fighting the good, clean, play-by-the-rules sort of battle and losing, our would-be entrepreneur gave up. He decided to accept the county zoning. Not to see the tract go idly unused, the enterprising retiree decided to pursue another business venture. He raised hogs, lots of them, 204 to be exact, on his little 12-acre tract. For those of you unfamiliar with the climate in time-lost Kentucky, the summers are downright southerly in their humidity and heat. As you can imagine, a rather malignant odor grew up around the thriving hog farm. Patrons of the restaurant ate elsewhere, anywhere else to be exact. In a matter of weeks, the zoning commissioner reversed his earlier ruling, returning the commercial status of the lot. It's another caveat of Kentucky zoning law that land can always be used for a purpose lesser on the scale of hierarchy than its current zoning. Everyone, especially the restaurateur, was surprised when the hog farm remained in operation. Nothing, not even substantial financial offers, could convince the new farmer to quit his now beloved occupation. Exactly 3 months and 4 days after the opening of the hog farm, the restaurant closed its doors for good. The farmer, in a fit of depression, ceased hog farming and decided to open a small sporting goods store instead. It remains there to this day, alongside his newly acquired restaurant. I hope you enjoyed the video. Hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications.